The fork hits the plate at 8:47 p.m. Nobody hears it. That is the problem, not the sound itself, but the fact that a 7-year-old boy has been sitting at this table for 43 minutes, and not one person in this room of 200 has noticed that his hands are shaking. Lucien Vale grips the edge of the white tablecloth with both fists now. His silver hair catches the chandelier light above him, $40,000 worth of crystal suspended from a ceiling that has never once witnessed anything honest. His blue eyes move fast, tracking mouths, reading lips, doing the exhausting invisible labor that nobody in this room will ever have to understand. Shoulders turned away from him, chins lifted, wine glasses raised in toasts he cannot hear to causes nobody here actually intends to fund. He is 7 years old, and he is completely alone in a room of 200 people. And somewhere near the far end of the table, a woman in a champagne Chanel gown just looked at him, really looked, for the first time all evening, and smiled. It is the worst smile Lucien has ever seen. Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Because that smile doesn't belong on a person who means well. Lucien has spent his entire short life learning to read what words cannot carry. The thing behind the expression, the truth underneath the performance. He learned it the hard way, the way deaf children always do, the way nobody writes about in the charity brochures stacked near the entrance of this very gala. And what lives behind Maris Kettler's smile tonight is not warmth, it is calculation. She glides toward him the way expensive women move in expensive rooms, like friction doesn't apply to them, like gravity is a courtesy they accept rather than a law they obey. She stops beside his chair. She leans down, close enough that he can smell her perfume. Gardenias, heavy and sweet, the kind that costs more per ounce than most people's rent. Her lips move with theatrical precision, each syllable shaped slowly, deliberately, the way adults speak to children they consider beneath them. Lucien reads every word. No one will believe you. His stomach drops straight through the floor. He turns, fast, desperate, toward the far end of the table where his father stands with his back half turned, phone glowing in one hand, jaw tight, the specific posture of a man who is handling something he cannot afford to let anyone see. Lucien raises one hand, then both. His fingers start to move, the language his father spent months learning in a specialist's office, the only language that has ever made Lucien feel like he exists in the same world as everyone else. Kael Varant does not look up. His phone screen pulses with a message that has no name attached to it. 11 words, capital letters. The kind of message that doesn't arrive unless someone has spent weeks building the architecture to send it. Sign the custody transfer. Tonight or the pup won't make it home. Kael's hand does not shake. His face does not change. He has been trained by decades and disasters to absorb catastrophic information without leaking a single drop of it to the surface. He reads the message once, he reads it again, and then he does the thing that men like him are built to do when the ground opens beneath them. He calculates, he does not look at his son. Across the room, Kael Reese feels the baby shift. It is not a dramatic shift, not a kick, not a punch, just the slow interior repositioning of a human being who has been running out of room for 3 weeks and has strong opinions about it. Kael presses one hand to his belly, breathes through his nose, and does not break his stride. He has been in this room for 11 minutes. He has already identified 4 exits, 2 compromised staff members, 1 woman whose smile hasn't reached her eyes once all evening, and 1 small boy at the edge of a long white table whose hands keep rising and then falling when nobody responds. Kael knows that look. He has worn it. He stops walking, and he stands still in the middle of 200 people in Tom Ford suits and Hermes ties and Rolex watches, one hand braced at his lower back, 32 weeks of pregnancy pressing against the buttons of a Brooks Brothers jacket he bought specifically because it was the only thing that still closed, and he watches Lucien Valhart's hands fall to the table for the 3rd time in 4 minutes. Something in Kaelen's chest makes a decision that his brain hasn't caught up to yet. He moves toward the table. The room parts for him, not out of respect, but out of the particular social reflex people deploy when they encounter something they don't know how to categorize. A pregnant male omega at a black tie gala, moving with deliberate purpose toward the alpha billionaire's table. wearing no status markers worth acknowledging, carrying, visibly, undeniably, enormously, a life that this room has already decided is someone else's inconvenience. Two men near the bar actually turn to watch. Kaelan doesn't look at them. He pulls out the chair beside Soren and sits. The boy's reaction is immediate, spine snapping straight, one hand flying to the table edge, eyes going wide and wary. The particular alertness of a child who has learned that unexpected attention usually means something is about to get worse. Kaelan doesn't reach for him. He doesn't explain himself. He doesn't perform reassurance with a smile or a wave or any of the gestures adults use to manage children they don't know how to talk to. He simply settles into the chair with the careful economy of someone for whom every movement has become a negotiation. And he looks at Soren the way you look at someone you intend to actually hear. Then he lifts his hands, and he signs, "Are you okay?" The fork slips from Soren's fingers completely. It hits the plate with a ring that two nearby guests register and immediately dismiss. And Soren stares at Kaelan's hands like he has just witnessed something structurally impossible. Like the floor opened up, and instead of falling, he landed somewhere safe. When you have spent your entire life watching the world happen on the other side of glass, and someone suddenly opens a door, the body doesn't know whether to walk through or run. Soren's hands rise, slowly, shakily, like he is offering something that might be taken from him. No. Kaelan holds absolutely still. He signs back, each shape deliberate, unhurried, made large enough to be unmistakable. "Show me." Soren glances across the room. His eyes find Maris Kettler where she stands near the head table, laughing at something a man in a grey suit has just said. Her champagne glass tilted at the exact angle that says, "I am completely in control of this evening." Soren watches her for 2 full seconds. Then he looks back at Kaelan. His hands move in small, tight shapes. The signs of someone who learned ASL, young enough that it lives in his muscle memory, but who has spent enough years in rooms that refuse to learn it back that his confidence has worn down to a careful whisper. "She said I won't go home." The baby moves again, different this time. A press. Insistent. Like a fist against the inside of Kaelan's ribs. Kaelan breathes. He keeps his face completely neutral because a frightened child reads adults the way Soren reads lips. Constantly. Uninvoluntarily, using every available signal to assess whether the situation is getting better or worse. And showing fear right now would confirm everything Soren already suspects. Kaelan looks up, past the orchid centerpiece, past the crystal glasses and the Tiffany and Company candelabras and the men who have turned back to their conversations, because a pregnant Omega sitting down at a table is apparently the least interesting thing that has happened tonight. Across the white expanse of linen and light, he finds Dashiell Valehart's face. The Alpha's phone is still in his hand. His expression is stone. But his eyes, just for a moment, a fraction of a second, less than a breath, drop to his son. And in that fraction, Kaelan reads the whole story. Dashiell Valehart is not cold. He is cornered. There is a difference. And it matters more than anything else in this room right now because a cold man cannot be reached. But a cornered man, a man who still looks at his son like that, even for half a second, even when he thinks no one is watching, a cornered man can be pulled back from the edge if someone reaches him fast enough and from the right direction. Kaelan files this information. He looks back at Soren. He signs, slowly and clearly, "I believe you. I'm not going anywhere." Soren stares at him. For a moment nothing moves. Then the boy's lower lip trembles, just once, quickly controlled, the emotional discipline of a child who has learned that visible distress makes adults uncomfortable enough to leave. And he nods. Kaelan nods back, and then he starts paying very close attention to the room. He has been trained, not formally, not with credentials or certifications anyone in this room would recognize, but trained the way life trains people who have to pay attention in order to survive. He notices the server near the east wall who hasn't filled a single glass in 20 minutes, but has checked his watch 4 times. He notices the way Maris Kettler's smile shifts, almost imperceptibly, like a frequency adjustment, whenever her eyes pass over Dashiell. He notices the side corridor to the left of the main entrance, where a door has been propped open with something small and dark wedged at the base. not a doorstop. The wrong shape for a doorstop. He notices the security guard stationed nearest to Soren, who hasn't once looked at Soren. He looks everywhere except at Soren. Kaelin's jaw tightens. He reaches slowly into his jacket pocket, and his fingers close around his phone. He does not take it out yet. He simply holds it, the way you hold something you know you're going to need before you know exactly when. Across the room, Maris Kettler sets down her champagne glass. She says something to the man in the grey suit, brief, dismissive, the conversational equivalent of closing a tab, and then she turns. And for just a moment, before her philanthropist's smile reassembles itself, Kaelin sees her real face, focused, timed, ready. She begins to move, not towards Soren, not directly. She moves the way someone moves when they have choreographed a sequence and are now executing it, natural on the surface, precise underneath. She drifts toward the head table. She exchanges 3 words with a woman in a Thoreau coat. She accepts a fresh glass from a passing server. And as she does all of this, the server near the east wall finally moves. He doesn't go toward any table. He heads toward the side corridor, toward the propped open door. Kaelin's hand closes around his phone. He leans slightly toward Soren and signs with one hand, low and close to the table, angled so that only the boy can see it. "Stay right here. Don't move." Soren's eyes go wide, but he nods. Kaelin pushes back his chair. Standing at 32 weeks is a full production. There is no graceful version of it, no way to rise from a seated position when your center of gravity has been relocated 6 inches forward without the entire process being visible to anyone paying attention. Kaelin does it anyway, one hand on the table, weight forward, up. He moves toward the corridor. He moves quietly. The propped door opens into a narrow service passage. Lower ceiling, fluorescent lights, the smell of industrial cleaning products cutting through the gardenias that saturate the main room. Kaelin stops just inside the entrance, back against the wall, and listens. Voices. 2 of them. Low. The car is already running. Service exit to the left. Black Tesla. Plates are switched. A pause. And if he still won't sign? A longer pause. Then we don't need the pup to be comfortable. We just need him to be present. Kaelin does not move. He does not breathe. He lifts his phone, screen brightness already killed, sound already silenced, and presses record. 40 seconds, 50, 60. He gets everything. He gets the Tesla. He gets the exit route. And he gets the name Maris uses for Dashiell, the Alpha, spoken with the particular contempt of someone who has studied a target long enough to stop fearing them. He gets the timeline. He gets the signal, a specific pattern of knocks on the service door that will tell the driver they are coming. He gets all of it. Then he steps back into the main hall. The chandelier light hits him like a spotlight he didn't ask for. Maris Kettler is already watching him from across the room, and for the first time all evening, her smile doesn't appear. She looks at the slight rectangular shape in Kaelin's jacket pocket. She looks at his face, and Kaelin watches her do the math, fast, efficient. At the calculation of a woman who has run this kind of operation before and knows exactly what it means when an unexpected variable appears with a recording device and a calm expression. Her eyes move to the security guard nearest Soren. The guard straightens. His hand moves toward his earpiece. Kaelin takes 3 steps back toward the table, faster now, careful but fast, one hand pressed to his belly because speed and 32 weeks are a negotiation he cannot lose. And he reaches Soren's chair just as the boy looks up. Soren's face changes the moment he sees Kaelin's expression. Children read adults better than adults read each other. He knows. His hands come up fast, urgent. "What did you hear?" Kaelin signs back with controlled, deliberate speed. "Everything. But I need you to trust me for 60 more seconds." Soren looks at him. 7 years old. Silver hair. Eyes that have spent every day of his life learning to find truth in the space between what people show and what they mean. He nods. Kaelin straightens. He turns toward the room. This ocean of wealth and willful blindness, and Rolex watches and Louis Vuitton gift bags stuffed with things nobody needs. And he pulls his phone from his pocket. The security guard near the east wall takes 1 step forward. Maris Kettler sets down her champagne glass for the 2nd time. And somewhere across the room, Kael Varant finally looks up from his phone. His eyes find Kaelen, and Kaelen looks directly back at him and does something that nobody in this room expects. He presses play. The recording plays for exactly 9 seconds before the room understands what it is hearing. Those 9 seconds are the loudest silence Kaelen Reese has ever stood inside. The string quartet stops, not because anyone signals them, but because the human ear recognizes, on some animal level, when a sound in a room has shifted from background noise to evidence. The cellist's bow hovers. The violinist's hand drops, and Maris Kettler's voice fills the space beneath $40,000 worth of crystal chandelier with the clean, damning clarity of audio recorded 3 feet from a heating vent in a service corridor. We take the deaf pup out through the service exit. Varant signs or he loses him. 9 words. The whole architecture of the evening collapses in 9 words. For one full breath, nobody moves. And the 200 people in this room, people who have built careers on reading power dynamics faster than anyone else in any given space, stand frozen in the specific paralysis of a social order being publicly dismantled. Their brains are running fast calculations. What does this mean? What does it cost to be associated with it? Where is the exit? And most importantly, who knew? Then Kael Varant moves. He doesn't lunge. He doesn't shout. He moves the way tectonic plates move, slow, absolute, and with consequences that will be felt for years. He crosses the distance between himself and his son in 8 measured steps, and when he arrives at Soren's chair, he does not look at the room. He does not look at Maris. He does not look at the recording still playing from Kaelen's phone. He looks at his son. Soren is already watching him. The boy's hands are pressed flat against the tablecloth, pressed hard, like he is trying to hold the table down, like he is trying to hold himself down. And his eyes are dry because 7 years of being invisible in rooms like this one has taught him that crying is a luxury that only gets you left behind faster. Kael crouches in front of him, right there, in the middle of the gala, in front of 200 people with Rolex watches and judgments loaded and ready. He crouches down to his son's eye level and his hands come up, and he signs, badly, imperfectly, with the halting accuracy of a man who learned in a specialist's office in Greenwich and has been practicing alone in his study at 2 a.m. for 3 years, but clearly enough. I see you. Soren stares at his father's hands. Something moves across the boy's face that is too complicated for a single word. Relief and anger and the particular grief of a child who has been waiting a long time for something they were not sure was ever coming. His lower lip presses tight. He nods once, short and controlled, the way his father nods when he's holding something large together with the force of his own composure. Like father, like son. Maris Kettler chooses this exact moment to speak. That recording is fabricated. Her voice arrives from across the table, smooth, certain, the voice of someone who has talked their way out of worse. I don't know what this person told you or what he claims to have captured, but I can assure you, the metadata is time-stamped. Kaelen does not look at her when he says it. He is still looking at Kael and Soren. 41 minutes ago, 40 feet from this room. The audio file is already uploaded to 3 separate encrypted drives and 1 attorney's inbox. He pauses. You should have checked the corridor before you used it. The silence that follows is a different kind than the first one. This silence has weight. Maris's composure holds, barely at the surface, the way ice holds over moving water in early spring. But underneath it, Kaelen can see the calculation happening in real time. She is running options. She is counting allies. She is assessing which version of this evening she can still salvage. And the answer she is arriving at is making the muscles around her eyes do something they are not supposed to do in public. She turns to Kael, and she makes the mistake of believing that the alpha standing between his son and the room is the same man who has been calculating all evening. Kael. Her voice drops, intimate, careful. The voice she uses when she wants someone to feel like the next thing she says is just between the two of them. Think about what this looks like. A pregnant Omega making accusations at a charity gala. Your son, clearly overwhelmed, being used as emotional leverage by someone who walked in off the street. He's not off the street. Vittorio De Luca speaks from the doorway. Nobody heard him enter. That is, in itself, the first piece of information about Vittorio De Luca that this room needs to understand. A man of his particular construction does not announce himself. He arrives. There is a difference. And every person in this space with enough operational experience feels it register in their chest before their brain catches up. He stands in the entrance with the stillness of someone who has decided exactly how much of himself to show and has left the rest somewhere the room cannot access. Black suit, chrome heart's cuffs at the wrist, barely visible, not performing. Dark eyes moving across the space with the unhurried efficiency of a man taking inventory. When his gaze reaches Soren, it stops. Something changes in his expression. Not dramatically, not with any of the manufactured sentimentality that this room specializes in. Just a settling, a particular attention. The way a person looks at something they have decided to protect before anyone has asked them to. Kael Reese has been consulting with my organization for 6 months, Vittorio says. He walks into the room. No one moves to stop him because no one in this room is certain enough of what he will do to risk being the first to try. On trafficking patterns in elite fundraising circuits, he stops at the edge of the table. This gala has been on our radar for 11 weeks. Maris's jaw shifts. You have no authority here. No, Vittorio agrees pleasantly. But the 2 gentlemen currently securing your service exit do. He pauses. Technically. On cue, or rather with the precision of something that has been coordinated for hours, 2 of Vittorio's staff appear at the side corridor entrance. Between them, wearing tuxedos that fit considerably better than the ones they were hired in, are the server from the east wall and the security guard who spent 40 minutes looking everywhere except at Soren. Their wrists are zip-tied. The server's face is the particular grey of a man who is doing rapid and unfavorable math about his immediate future. The Tesla keycard falls from his jacket pocket. It hits the marble floor and slides 3 inches and stops. The room stares at it. Maris stares at it, and then she does something that tells Kael everything he needs to know about the kind of person she actually is when the scaffolding comes down. She straightens her spine, she lifts her chin, and she turns to the room. These 200 wealthy, watchful, calculating people, and she performs. This is a coordinated attack on my reputation, she says, and her voice carries the indignant, crystalline certainty of someone who has spent decades in rooms where confidence was the only currency that mattered. I have spent 15 years building programs that protect vulnerable children. 15 years, and you are going to stand here and take the word of a... She gestures toward Kael, and the gesture is precise and contemptuous. A pregnant Omega who inserted himself into a private event and claims to have audio that... Claims, Kael says. He taps his phone once. The recording plays again. We take the deaf pup out through the service exit. Valhart signs or he loses him. This time the room doesn't freeze. This time the room moves. Chairs scraping, murmurs rising, phones appearing from pockets as 200 social calculators begin the rapid process of deciding which side of this evening they want to be documented on. 3 people near the back move quietly toward the exit. A woman in a Dior gown reaches for her husband's arm. A man with a senatorial bearing takes 3 steps away from the table he has been standing beside all evening, as if the distance between himself and it suddenly matters enormously. Maris watches her audience rearrange itself. Kael watches Maris. There is a moment, brief, contained, visible only to someone paying close enough attention, where the performance slips entirely, where the diamond earrings and the champagne Chanel and the 15 years of manufactured respectability fall away, and what is underneath looks at Kael Reese across a room full of people and calculates whether it can still win. Then her eyes move to the side exit. Kael says quietly, without looking away, Vittorio. Covered. Vittorio doesn't turn around. All 3. Maris's heel shifts on the marble. She doesn't move. Dashiell Valhart has been standing with his back to all of it, physically positioned between the room and his son, one hand resting on the back of Soren's chair. Now he turns. He faces Maris Kettler. And the room understands, in the specific way rooms understand things that are happening above their ability to intervene, that whatever this man says next is not going to be loud. You used my child. His voice is low, even, the kind of voice that doesn't need volume because it has never in its life needed volume to be obeyed. You built a trap around a 7-year-old boy, and you used his deafness as the mechanism. He pauses. Oh, you looked at the thing that makes him different, and you decided it made him useful. Maris opens her mouth. Don't, Dashiell says. Just that. She closes it. Soren shifts in his chair. He has been watching his father's back for the last 90 seconds with the focused, full-body attention of a child who is reading a situation entirely through posture and movement and the way the adults around him are holding their shoulders. He cannot hear the exchange. He cannot hear Vittorio's calm voice or the murmurs of the room or the particular weight in his father's words. But he sees Maris's face, and he sees the moment she looks at him, directly, for the first time since that smile in the corridor, and his stomach turns over because what is in her eyes right now is not cruelty. It is calculation. She is still working out angles. She is still looking for the move. Soren's hands come up under the table, fast and low, angled toward Kaelen. She's not done. Kaelen catches it from the corner of his eye. He signs back without turning his head, fingers moving small and tight beneath the tablecloth edge. I know. Watch her hands. Soren watches. Maris shifts her clutch from her left hand to her right. Her thumb moves against the clasp, a gesture so small and casual it would disappear in any room with more noise. But Kaelen has been paying attention to this woman's hands for 40 minutes, and that specific movement, thumb to clasp twice, is not casual. It is a signal. His head snaps toward the main entrance. The doors are still open. The foyer beyond them is lit warm gold, and through the light, Kaelen can see the silhouette of a third man he has not accounted for. Not Vittorio's, not security, standing with the particular patience of someone who has been waiting for exactly this signal and has now received it. Kaelen is on his feet before the thought fully forms. Vittorio. His voice comes out different, lower, faster. Main entrance, third man, he's not yours. Vittorio's head turns, a fraction of a second. Then, Zamir, front door, now. One of Vittorio's men breaks from the wall at a pace that is technically still walking and completely unsuited to being stopped. The silhouette in the foyer shifts, starts to move. And in the chair at the end of the table, Soren Valhart stands up. Not dramatically, not with any of the flourish that the moment seems to demand. He simply stands, small, silver-haired. He's steady, and he walks to the edge of the table, and he looks at Kaelen with an expression that is 7 years old and 40 years old at the same time. His hands come up. There's someone outside. I saw him through the window. He's been there since before we sat down. Kaelen stares at the boy. He has been in this room for 57 minutes. He has been tracking exits and staff and signals and audio and positions for 57 minutes. And a 7-year-old deaf child, sitting quietly at the edge of a table while the world talked around him, noticed the thing he missed. The foyer erupts. Not loudly, Vittorio's people are too professional for loud, but there is movement, fast and contained, the sound of something heavy meeting something solid, and then a voice calling out a single word that Kaelen cannot fully hear from here, but that makes every remaining person in the dining room turn toward the entrance simultaneously. Dashiell is already moving toward his son. Maris takes one step toward the side corridor, Vittorio's voice, quiet and absolute. Don't. She stops, and in the frozen, chandelier-lit, orchid-scented stillness of a room that will never quite be the same after tonight, Kaelen Reese feels the baby kick, hard, sudden, unmistakable, and he presses his hand to his belly and breathes and looks at the small silver-haired boy now standing in the circle of his father's arm. Soren is signing something up at Dashiell. Dashiell is signing back. Kaelen cannot read it from here, but he can see Dashiell's face, and that is enough. The sirens start outside at 9:23 p.m. The third man's name is Terence Okafor, and he is already talking by the time the first police cruiser pulls up outside. Not because he wants to, not because Vittorio De Luca's hands are anywhere near him. They are not. Vittorio is across the foyer with his arms folded and his expression the mild, unhurried patience of someone who has learned that silence extracts more than pressure. Terence Okafor is talking because the alternative is worse, and he is smart enough to know it, and the thing that makes him smart enough to know it is the same thing that made him take this job in the first place. Desperation has a very specific relationship with intelligence. It sharpens some things and destroys others. He is talking about the Tesla, he is talking about the plates, and he is talking about a warehouse in the Bronx with a room that has no windows and a combination lock that changes every 48 hours. And he is giving up that combination not because Vittorio asked for it, but because the two officers who arrived 4 minutes ago are standing 6 feet away, and Terence Okafor has decided that the version of tonight where he cooperates is significantly better than the other one. Inside the dining hall, the gala has made the transition from event to crime scene with the particular social awkwardness that only occurs when 200 wealthy people realize they cannot leave. The string quartet is sitting in their chairs. The servers are standing against the east wall. The 200 guests are doing the specific thing that 200 wealthy people do when law enforcement arrives at a space they are occupying. They are performing innocence with the focused intensity of people who have a great deal to lose and have already called their attorneys. Soren Valhart is sitting at the table. He has Dashiell's jacket across his shoulders, not because he is cold, but because his father put it there in the specific reflexive way that parents cover children when they cannot cover everything else, and Soren accepted it without comment. He is watching the room. That is what nobody in this space understands about Soren Valhart, has never understood, has never taken the time to consider. The boy misses nothing. He has spent 7 years in a world that communicates in a frequency he cannot access, and so he learned to receive every other signal available to him with a precision that hearing people never develop because they never have to. He reads the room the way a navigator reads the water, not through any single indicator, but through the cumulative pattern of everything moving at once. He sees the woman in the Dior gown telling her husband something behind her hand that she does not want the officers to hear. He sees the man with the senatorial bearing standing close enough to Maris Kettler's former position to suggest they arrive together. He sees the server against the east wall, not the compromised one, a different one, slide something small and flat into his apron pocket when he thinks the officer nearest him is looking the other way. Soren's eyes track all of it. He does not sign any of it yet. He is waiting. Kael Reese has positioned himself at the edge of the table, close enough to Soren to be reachable, but not so close that he crowds the boy's sightlines. His back is against a chair. His hands are in his lap. He is doing the thing that the last hour has required of him, holding very still while his body wages its own separate campaign against stillness. 32 weeks means Braxton Hicks' contractions arrive without scheduling conflicts. The tightening across his abdomen is not pain. It is pressure, a long, slow, muscular squeeze that lasts 30 seconds and then releases, and he breathes through it the way he has been breathing through everything tonight. Deliberately, without announcement, because the moment he shows physical distress in a room that already cannot categorize him, he becomes the story instead of the solution. And he exhales. The contraction releases. He looks up. Dashiell Valhart is standing 15 feet away, speaking to two officers in a low voice, and from the posture of everyone involved, the conversation is the kind where one party has an attorney on the phone and the other party is deciding how much to say before that attorney arrives. Dashiell is controlled. Precise, he is giving information in the ordered, specific way of someone who learned long ago that the quality of what you say matters infinitely more than the quantity, and who is currently providing the kind of detail, names, times, message content, documented threat, that will make whatever follows significantly easier to prosecute. He has not looked at his phone once in the last 12 minutes. This, Kael thinks, is what it looks like when a man stops calculating and starts deciding. Across the room, behind a temporary cordon of officers and one very focused detective, Maris Kettler is not talking. She stands with her champagne gown still perfectly arranged, and her diamond earrings still catching the chandelier light, and her expression locked in the specific configuration that attorneys coach before arraignments. Neutral, present, revealing nothing. But her right hand is pressed flat against her clutch, and Kael has been watching that hand long enough to know that it is not resting. It is holding. The way you hold something when you are afraid of what happens when you let go. And the detective, a broad-shouldered woman in a grey blazer who introduced herself to the room as Detective Ania Cruz, moves between clusters of guests with the methodical patience of someone who does this work because she is very good at it and not for any other reason. She has been in the room for 9 minutes. In those 9 minutes, she has spoken to 4 people, looked at Vittorio De Luca's documentation for 90 seconds, and glanced at the Tesla keycard on the marble floor with the particular expression of someone confirming what they already suspected. She stops beside Kael. She does not crouch or lean or do any of the physical things people do when they want to seem less threatening. She simply stands at a respectful angle and speaks at a normal volume. "Mr. Rees." Her voice is even and professionally warm in the way of someone who has learned to calibrate exactly how much warmth makes a witness cooperative without crossing into performance. "I understand you recorded the conversation in the service corridor." "Yes." Kael pulls up the audio file. 11 minutes of continuous recording. "I can send it directly or both." She holds out a card. "To that address, right now if possible." Kael sends it. She watches him do it, then makes a note. "You recognized the threat in real time." "It is not entirely a question." "I recognized Soren's distress first," Kael says. "The rest followed from there." Detective Cruz looks at Soren. The boy meets her gaze with the level, unflinching eye contact of someone who is not afraid of being looked at and never has been. And he has spent too long being looked through to be intimidated by being looked at. She turns back to Kael. "He flagged the third man at the entrance." "Before I did." Something moves through Detective Cruz's expression. Not surprise exactly, but a recalibration. The adjustment people make when they realize a situation contains more than the initial frame suggested. She looks at Soren again, and this time it is a different kind of looking. She reaches into her blazer pocket and produces a small notepad. She holds it out towards Soren, along with a pen. Then she signs, slowly, and with the particular careful shape of someone who learned ASL professionally, rather than personally. "Would you write down what you saw tonight? Everything. In your own order." Soren stares at her hands. Then he looks at Kael. Kael signs. She's a detective. "She wants your help." Soren looks back at Detective Cruz. He takes the notepad. He starts writing immediately, not hesitantly, not in the halting way of a child uncertain whether their account will matter, but with the focused, purposeful handwriting of someone who has spent years communicating in written form because it was the medium most consistently available to him. He writes for 3 minutes without stopping. When he hands the notepad back, Detective Cruz reads it. Her expression does not change, but she turns toward Dashiell Valehart with new speed in her step. And Kael looks at what Soren has written. The boy has documented 15 separate observations from the evening, times, positions, gestures, exchanges. He has described the server's signal, the clutch adjustment, the third man's position relative to the window, and 4 additional staff members whose behavior he flagged as inconsistent. He has noted the table where Maris held a 3-minute conversation at 8:15 p.m. with a man Soren has described with enough physical specificity that an identification should take minutes rather than hours. At the bottom, in the same careful handwriting, Soren has written one additional sentence. The woman in the blue dress near the back has been on her phone since the recording played. She's not calling her lawyer, she's sending photos. Kaelin's head comes up. He finds the woman in the blue dress. She is standing against the far wall, phone raised at chest height, angled toward the front of the room. Not photographs, video. Her thumb is moving against the screen, not capturing, uploading. Live. Kaelin's jaw tightens. He looks at Vittorio. Vittorio is already looking at the woman in the blue dress. He says 2 words, quietly, to the man beside him. The man moves. The woman in the blue dress looks up from her phone. Too late. And at the table, Lucien Vale reaches out and taps Kaelin's arm. Kael looks down. The boy signs, small and fast and certain. "There's one more. I didn't write it down because I didn't want the detective to move yet." Kael goes very still. "Where?" Soren's eyes move, a single controlled flick, toward the northeast corner of the room, where a man in a grey suit has been standing with a glass of wine for the last 40 minutes, having apparently attended an anti-trafficking gala without speaking to a single other attendee, looking at nothing in particular in the way that only people who are looking at something very specific actually look at nothing. And the man in the grey suit. The same man Maris spoke to at 8:15 p.m. He meets Kaelin's gaze across the room. and he smiles. Not the practiced social smile of gala circuit regulars. A different kind. The kind that means, I know you see me, and I want you to know that it doesn't matter. Kaelin's phone buzzes in his pocket. He looks at the screen. Unknown number. One message. You have the recording. We have something you don't. Check your car. The parking structure beneath the building smells like concrete and old exhaust, and the specific cold that lives underground regardless of the season above it. Kaelin does not go alone. He goes with Zamir, who is Vittorio's and built like a man who was assembled for utility rather than aesthetics, and with Detective Cruz, who insisted with the flat, a non-negotiable calm of someone who has been doing this job long enough to know exactly which shortcuts get people killed. They take the service elevator, slower, less visible, and Kaelin keeps his phone in his hand and his eyes on the floor indicator and his breathing controlled. The baby has been still for 11 minutes. This worries him more than the contraction did. He does not say this. The parking level opens into fluorescent yellow light and the low hum of ventilation systems doing work nobody ever thinks about. 3 rows of vehicles. His car is in the second row, a slate-grey Volvo, sensible and unremarkable, the car of someone who made a practical decision and has never regretted it. From here he can see the driver's side window. Something is taped to it. He knows from the shape of it that it is an envelope. He knows, from the deliberate visibility of it, taped at eye level, centered, meant to be found, that it is not a threat. It is a message. Detective Cruz photographs it before Zamir removes it. She photographs the parking space, the adjacent vehicles, the ventilation grate 3 feet to the left, where a secondary camera would have optimal coverage of the approach. She does all of this with the systematic thoroughness of someone building a case rather than reacting to a moment, and Kaelin watches her work and thinks, not for the first time tonight, that competence is the most reassuring thing a person can display in a crisis. Zamir hands her the envelope. She opens it. Inside, a single photograph. Printed, or not digital, the kind of deliberate analog choice that someone makes when they want to demonstrate they understand how digital evidence is traced. The photograph shows a document, legal formatting, signatures at the bottom, a notary seal. Detective Cruz's face does not change. She shows it to Kaelin. It takes him 4 seconds to understand what he is looking at. A custody transfer document. Not a forgery. The court seal is genuine. The formatting is consistent with family court filings in New York. The signatures are notarized. The named transferring party is Lucien Vale. The named recipient is a shell organization, a non-profit with an address in Delaware and a board of directors whose names mean nothing to Kaelin individually, but whose arrangement on the page means everything. Maris Kettler's name does not appear anywhere on the document. It doesn't need to. This is filed, Kaelin says. Submitted, Detective Cruz corrects. Not approved. There's a difference. She looks at the photograph for another moment. But if Dashiell had signed tonight, approval would have been a formality. The paperwork was already in the pipeline. How long? Based on the notary date, she tilts the photograph, reads the small print at the bottom. 6 weeks. 6 weeks. Kaelin thinks about this. About the architecture of 6 weeks. About the meetings and the filings and the bribed notaries and the shell organizations and the careful incremental construction of a legal mechanism designed to absorb a child without leaving fingerprints. He thinks about Soren at the table, fork in hand, watching mouths move. 6 weeks of this being built around the boy while the boy sat at gala tables and watched the world talk without him. She wasn't improvising tonight, Kaelin says. No. Detective Cruz slides the photograph into an evidence bag. She was executing. Zamir speaks for the first time since the elevator. There's a camera. He nods toward the ventilation grate. Wrong angle for building security. Someone put it there. Detective Cruz is already photographing it. Kaelin stands in the fluorescent yellow light of the parking level and does a thing he has not allowed himself to do for the last hour. He breathes. Not strategically, not controlled, just breathes. The way the body breathes when it has been holding something very large for a very long time and has located for a moment a space large enough to set it down. The baby moves. A long, slow roll from left to right, not distressed, present. Kaelin puts his hand on his belly. Hello, he thinks. Not out loud, just internally, in the way you communicate with someone who is not yet in a position to respond, but who is, you have decided, already listening. We're okay. He believes it more than he did 11 minutes ago. He turns back toward the elevator. There's something else, Zamir says. Kaelan stops. Zamir has moved to the back of the Volvo. He is looking at the rear bumper, not at it, but under the edge of it, in the narrow space between the bumper and the body of the car, where nothing should be and where something clearly is. Detective Cruz is beside him in 4 steps. The device is small. Matte black, magnetic, the size of a deck of cards. She photographs it 3 times from different angles before she touches it. Or GPS tracker, she says, active. Kaelan stares at it. They know where you've been for... She checks the device's indicator light. At least the last 2 weeks. 2 weeks. He had been consulting with Vittorio's organization for 6 months. He had flagged this gala 11 weeks ago. He had begun preparation, audio equipment, legal contacts, encrypted drives, 3 weeks back. They knew, not everything. Not the recording, not the specific play, or Maris would have used the corridor differently. But they knew he was involved. They knew his car. They knew where he went. The envelope on his windshield was not a threat. It was proof of concept. We can reach you. We could have stopped you. We chose to let you play because we believe we've already won. Kaelan's jaw sets. He thinks about the man in the grey suit upstairs. The smile. I know you see me. And I want you to know that it doesn't matter. The man is not Maris's subordinate. Maris was never the top of this. The elevator doors open. Detective Cruz is already on her radio, and Zamir's hand has moved to his jacket, and Kaelan is moving back toward the elevator before the thought is finished, because if there is a layer above Maris, a layer that let tonight proceed because it was confident it could survive exposure, because it has done this before and survived exposure before, then what is happening upstairs right now is not a resolution. It is the end of round 1. And Soren Valhart is still in that room. The elevator takes 19 seconds. Kaelan counts every one. And he comes through the dining hall doors at a pace that is technically still walking, because running at 32 weeks is a negotiation he would lose. And his eyes go immediately to the table where Soren was sitting and the chair where Dashiell was standing, and both are empty. His heart stops in the specific way that hearts stop when the information arriving is too large to process at normal speed. Then, voices. The service corridor entrance to the left, a cluster of figures, Vittorio's people, 2 officers, and between them, Dashiell Valhart crouched at his son's eye level, hands moving in imperfect, earnest ASL, while Soren watches his father's face with the particular expression of someone who is deciding, in real time, how much to trust. Kaelan exhales. He crosses the room. Dashiell looks up as he approaches, and something in the Alpha's expression shifts, the controlled efficiency of a man managing a crisis intersecting with something older and less managed. Gratitude, maybe, or its precursor, the recognition that gratitude is owed. The envelope, Kaelan says, keeping his voice low. You need to know what was in it. Dashiell straightens. Show me. Kaelan pulls up the photograph on his phone. Dashiell looks at it for 3 seconds. His face does not change, but his right hand, at his side, unattended, unrehearsed, closes into a fist. 6 weeks, Kaelan says. I know. Dashiell's voice is quieter than any voice he has used all evening. I received the first communication 8 weeks ago. I thought I was managing it. He pauses. I was managing my perception of it. There's a layer above Maris. Yes. The man in the grey suit. Dashiell looks at him directly. You identified him. Soren identified him first. Something crosses Dashiell's face. He looks at his son. Soren is watching them both with the focused, full-body attention of someone reading a conversation they cannot hear. His eyes move between Kaelan's expression and his father's, assembling meaning from the physical language of the exchange. He signs, small and precise, the grey suit man left. 8 minutes ago, through the main entrance. Kaelan's stomach drops, Dashiell's fist tightens, and in the middle of a dining hall that smells like gardenias and evidence and the specific aftermath of an evening that was supposed to go a very different way. And the case against Maris Kettler starts to feel like exactly what the man in the grey suit intended it to feel like. A contained loss. A sacrifice play. Maris handed over. The legal document surfaced. The operation exposed at the level that was always expendable. And the person who built it, the person whose name appears on nothing, whose presence in the room tonight is already dissolving from memory because his face is the kind of face that knows how to be forgotten, is already gone. Through the main entrance, into the city, into the 8 million people who do not know his name. Kaelin looks at Soren, the boy looks back, and Soren signs, slowly, with the particular deliberateness of someone who wants to be certain they are understood. I saw his face. I remember all of it. By 10:15 p.m., the dining hall has been divided into 2 rooms that do not officially exist yet, but are already operating as if they do. The first room is the one the officers are managing. 200 guests in various states of cooperation, their statements being taken in the careful, methodical sequence that Detective Ania Cruz runs like a conductor running an orchestra she built herself. This room is controlled, visible, the room that will appear in the official record. The second room is a corner near the service corridor, not cordoned off, not marked. Just a cluster of 4 people who have collectively decided that the official record is not yet safe to trust completely, and who are having a conversation in low voices and careful signs while the chandelier light does its indifferent work above them. Dashiell, Vittorio, Kaelin. Soren is the one talking. He has commandeered the notepad that Detective Cruz left with him, and he is writing with the focused, uninterrupted efficiency of someone who has been holding this information for 2 hours and has finally been given a container that seems large enough to hold it. Vittorio reads over Kaelin's shoulder as each page fills. His expression stays mild, but his eyes sharpen with each line. The man in the grey suit's name, according to Soren's 3-minute conversation with him at 8:15 p.m., during which Soren was seated at the table and the man leaned down to speak to him with the condescending, performative warmth that some adults use on children they consider beneath engagement, is Aldrich Beaumont. He said his name once, and he said it the way people say things to deaf children when they believe the child cannot hear them and cannot read lips because nobody has told them how good deaf children are at reading lips. Casually, without concern for what the child might retain. My name is Aldrich Beaumont. Your father and I have an arrangement. You're going to be fine. This is just business. Soren wrote every word. Kaelin reads the page. He reads it again. He passes it to Vittorio. Vittorio reads it once, sets the notepad down and says, quietly, to no one in particular, in the tone of someone confirming a suspicion rather than discovering a fact, Beaumont. Dashiell's head comes up. You know him. I know of him. Vittorio folds his hands. The distinction matters. Does it? In my world, it's the difference between someone you can find and someone who finds you first. Vittorio pauses. Aldrich Beaumont has been adjacent to 4 separate trafficking investigations in the last decade. 4 different jurisdictions, 4 different primary suspects. Beaumont has never been charged. He has never been named. He has never appeared on a document. He looks at Soren. He is very careful about what he says and where and to whom. Soren is watching Vittorio's face. He signs to Kaelin. He's saying the man is dangerous. Kaelin signs back, yes. Soren signs, I know. I saw his shoes. Kaelin stops. He signs, what about his shoes? Soren sets down the pen. He signs with both hands, slowly and deliberately, the ASL equivalent of choosing words carefully. When he crouched down to talk to me. His shoes were the same kind my father's security director wears, the ones that have the extra sole for the thing inside. Kaelin stares at the boy. He looks at Dashiell. Dashiell's expression has become very still in the way of a man who has just received information that reorganizes everything he thought he was managing. His security director. Kaelin signs to Soren, slowly. Are you certain? Soren looks at him with the particular patience of a 7-year-old who has been underestimated enough times to recognize it on contact. He signs, I've sat next to the man at dinner 6 times. I look at people's shoes. It's something I do. Of course it is, Kaelin thinks. When you cannot hear footsteps approaching, you learn to read the footwear. Dashiell reaches for his phone. Vittorio's hand comes out. Not a grab, a placement. A single palm pressed lightly against Dashiell's wrist. Don't call him, Vittorio says. If it's Marcus, don't say his name here. Dashiell's voice drops to something that barely qualifies as sound. If it's who Soren is describing, Vittorio says, adjusting, then calling him right now tells him what we know and gives him time to move. He pauses. How long has he been with you? Dashiell doesn't answer immediately. The pause itself is an answer. Long enough to know the custody filing timeline. Long enough to know Kaelin's car. Long enough to know Soren's routines, his schedule, the specific mechanics of which staff member stood nearest to him at which events and could be leveraged most efficiently. Long enough to build a trap that was never really about Maris Kettler. Maris was the frame. The man on the inside was the mechanism. Kaelin feels the Braxton Hicks return, the long, slow, muscular tightening that his body has been deploying all evening, like a counterpoint to the tension happening outside of it. He breathes through it. He keeps his hand at his side. He does not sit down, because sitting down right now means losing his sightline on the room and his sightline on Soren, and both of those feel non-negotiable. He looks at Soren. Soren is watching his father. Specifically, Soren is watching his father's hands. Not for ASL, just watching the way Dashiell's hands are holding themselves. The micro-tension. The controlled stillness that is doing significant work. And Soren has that look again, the one Kaelin recognized at the table 2 hours ago. The look of a child who understands exactly how serious the situation is and is making the private decision of whether to show it. He looks at Kaelin instead. He signs, small and private, angled away from the adults. Is my dad scared? Kaelin holds the boy's gaze for a moment. He signs back, honest. Yes. But he's more angry. There's a difference. Soren considers this. Then, angry at who? Kaelin signs himself for missing it. Soren nods slowly, like this is information he is filing rather than feeling. He picks up the notepad again. He writes, at the bottom of the last page, "The man in the grey suit told me one more thing. I didn't write it before because I wanted to tell it to my dad." He tears the page carefully from the notepad. He folds it once. And he holds it out to Dashiell. Dashiell takes it. He unfolds it. He reads it. Kaelin watches Dashiell's face. He watches the controlled, calcified expression that the man has worn all evening. The one that absorbed a ransom threat and a custody document and a parking garage revelation and a revelation about his own security director without showing a single crack in the surface. And he watches that expression, for the first time tonight, become something else. Not cracked, dismantled, from the inside. Dashiell folds the paper back. He looks at his son. Soren looks back. And then Kael Varant, alpha billionaire, the kind of man whose name in a room can change what people in that room are willing to do, kneels on the marble floor of a dining hall that has never seen him as anything but composed. It in front of Vittorio De Luca and Kaelin Reese and 2 officers who are pointedly not looking in this direction and 200 guests who are. He kneels and he opens his arms. Soren walks into them, not running, walking. Steady, deliberate, with the self-possessed dignity of a child who has spent 2 hours being the calmest person in a room full of adults losing their composure, and who has decided now that this is the appropriate moment to stop. Dashiell holds him. Over the boy's silver hair, his expression is raw in the way that things are raw when the protection has been removed, not wounded exactly, but open, present. The thing underneath the calculation finally surfacing now that the calculation is done. Vittorio looks at the floor. Kaelin looks at the window. He gives them the privacy of his attention being elsewhere. 30 seconds. Then Vittorio speaks, low and even. What did the note say? Kaelin looks at him. Vittorio looks at Dashiell. Dashiell sets his son back, gently, with both hands, the way you set down something you are not going to put down again. And he looks at Vittorio and says 4 words. He knew about Baltimore. The silence that follows is the specific kind that happens when everyone in a small cluster of people understands the significance of a statement without requiring the details to be spoken aloud. Baltimore. The night that rewired Kael Varant. The night that only 2 people should know the specifics of, because it happened in the middle of a situation that was handled privately and buried cleanly and has never, in 5 years, surfaced anywhere. And Aldrich Beaumont knew. Which means one of 2 things. Either his access to Dashiell's inner circle goes back 5 years, further than anyone in this corner of the room has calculated, or the man Beaumont works for does. Vittorio says quietly, "Then we're not looking at an opportunist." "No," Dashiell says, "we're looking at something that has been building for years." "Yes." Kaelin's phone buzzes. He looks at the screen. Unknown number, different from the last one. Different format. The prefix is not domestic. One message, a photograph. He opens it. It is a photograph of the service exit. Not the current service exit, not tonight's crime scene, not the propped door with the Tesla keycard and the zip-tied security personnel. A different service exit. Different hallway. Different building entirely, and based on the wall paneling and the lighting fixture visible at the edge of the frame. And in the photograph, standing at that different service exit, wearing a grey suit and looking directly at whoever is taking the picture with the calm, composed expression of a man who is not afraid of cameras because he has always known what to do when they find him, Aldrich Beaumont. The timestamp in the corner of the photograph reads, "Tonight, 9:58 p.m., 23 minutes ago." A second message arrives from the same number, 5 seconds later. "He's not gone. He's at the secondary location. I can give you the address. But you'll owe me." Kaelin stares at his phone. He looks at Vittorio. He turns the screen. Vittorio reads the messages. He reads them again. He looks at Kaelin with an expression that contains several things simultaneously. Assessment, our consideration, and the particular brand of professional respect that one person extends to another when they recognize that the situation they are both standing in has just become significantly more complicated than either of them planned for. "Do you know who this is?" Kaelin asks. "I have a suspicion," Vittorio says. "Good suspicion or bad?" Vittorio considers the question with what appears to be genuine reflection. "Unknown quantity," he says finally. "Which in my experience is the most dangerous kind." Soren tugs Kaelin's sleeve. Kaelin looks down. The boy signs, quick and certain. "Answer it." Kaelin looks at the phone. He looks at Vittorio. He looks at the boy who has been the sharpest instrument in this room all night. He types, "Who are you?" The response arrives in 4 seconds. "Someone Beaumont doesn't know he made an enemy of yet. You have about 6 minutes before that changes. What do you want to do?" Kaelin types the word yes and hits send before Vittorio finishes his sentence. The response arrives in under 3 seconds. "Smart. Here's the address. You have 5 minutes and 40 seconds. Don't bring the detective yet. Beaumont has someone watching the building entrance for badges. Bring the mafia guy. He'll know what to do with what you find inside." An address follows, a building 2 blocks north, a floor number, a room number. Then, one more thing. The file in that room doesn't just have Beaumont's name on it. It has yours, Reese. And the baby's. The phone goes dark. Kaelin stares at the black screen. His hand moves to his belly without instruction, the automatic. I involuntary gesture that his body has developed over 32 weeks of carrying a life that has no idea what kind of world it is being born into. He feels the baby shift, slow and interior, and he thinks, "Not tonight. Not while I'm standing in this room. Not while there is still something left to do." He looks at Vittorio. Vittorio has already read the address over his shoulder. He is already moving. "2 of mine," he says, not looking back. "Zamir and Deshawn, 2 minutes." Dashiell straightens from where he has been crouched beside Soren. "I'm going." "You're not." Kaelin's voice comes out with a certainty that surprises even him. "Soren doesn't leave your side from this point forward, not for 6 minutes, not for 60 seconds. If Beaumont has coverage on that building entrance, he has coverage on this room too. The moment you leave Soren's line of sight tonight is the moment we hand them the only remaining move they have left." Dashiell looks at him. It is the look of a man who is not accustomed to being told what to do and who is, in this precise moment, intelligent enough to recognize that the person telling him is right. He looks at Soren. Soren is already watching his father. The boy signs, direct and clear. "Go. I'll stay with Detective Cruz. I'm not afraid." Dashiell's jaw tightens. He signs back. "I know you're not." He looks at Kaelin. "If that file has what I think it has, then we end this tonight," Kaelin says. "All of it, not just Maris." Dashiell holds his gaze for 2 full seconds. Then he nods. Zamir appears from the corridor entrance. Behind him, a man Kael has not formally met. Broad, quiet, moving with the compact efficiency of someone who measures every step, stops at Vittorio's shoulder. This is Deshaun Mercer, and he carries himself like a man who has been in worse rooms than this one and has always come out of them, which is either reassuring or concerning depending on your perspective. Kael decides it is reassuring. Stairs, Vittorio says, not the elevator. They move. The service stairs smell like damp concrete and old paint, and the fluorescent strips overhead flicker at irregular intervals that make the descent feel longer than it is. Kael keeps one hand on the railing and moves at the fastest pace that 32 weeks and a compromised center of gravity allows, which is faster than anyone in this stairwell expects. Because he has been navigating the logistics of a body that no longer fully belongs to him for 2 months, and he has gotten efficient at it. Zamir checks the ground floor door before opening it. Clear, the street outside is cold and bright and loud, with the particular nighttime energy of a city that does not adjust its volume for crises happening inside private buildings. The Gala building's red and blue lights are visible half a block south. The building they are headed to is north, glass front, illuminated lobby, the kind of mid-range commercial building that exists in every major city as invisible infrastructure. Not glamorous enough to draw attention, accessible enough to be useful. Exactly the kind of building you use when you need a room that nobody will remember you being in. Vittorio counts the entrance cameras as they approach, and he says something to Deshaun in a low voice that Kael doesn't catch, and Deshaun adjusts their angle of approach. 40 degrees west, coming in from the parking structure entrance rather than the lobby doors. The parking structure entrance has no camera. Kael notes this and files the implication. Whoever sent the address knew the camera layout. Whoever sent the address has been in this building before, possibly more than once. The elevator inside the parking structure opens onto the 4th floor. Room 412. The hallway is empty. Beige walls, grey carpet, the kind of commercial neutrality that exists specifically to be forgotten. 3 of the overhead lights are on. One, directly above room 412, is off, deliberately off. Zamir stops 4 feet from the door. He looks at Vittorio. Vittorio looks at the gap at the base of the door, no light bleeding through from inside, and then at the gap at the top, where a faint, very faint smell reaches them. Not food, not cleaning products. Paper, the specific dry smell of a great deal of printed paper in an enclosed space. And something else. Electronics. The warm, faint, almost imperceptible heat smell of hardware that has been running for hours. Vittorio nods at Deshaun. Deshaun tries the door handle. It opens. Unlocked. Left unlocked. The room inside is not what any of them expected. It is an office, but not an occupied one. Not tonight's office. The furniture is standard commercial rental. A desk, 2 chairs, a table along the east wall. What is not standard is what covers every surface of that table. Files, printed documents, organized in labeled manila folders, were stacked with the methodical precision of someone who works this way habitually. A laptop, open, screen locked, its power indicator pulsing green in the dark room. A portable hard drive plugged into the laptop's side port. 2 burner phones, both powered off, laid parallel to each other like utensils at a place setting. And in the center of the desk, separate from everything else, a single white envelope. No name on the front. Vittorio does not touch it. He photographs the entire room first, every surface, every angle, the view from the door, the view from the east wall, the laptop's locked screen, the hard drive's model number. He does this with the practiced thoroughness of a man who understands that what you document before you touch is the only version of a room that survives what happens after you touch it. Kael moves to the file table. The folders are labeled in printed type, not handwriting. Dates and reference numbers, no names on the tabs. He opens the first one. Inside, financial records, transfer receipts, account numbers with the routing format of shell companies. He opens the second. Photographs. Surveillance photographs, printed at 4x6, paper clipped in groups. He recognizes the dining hall in the first group. Tonight's gala, photographed from an angle that suggests a camera positioned at height, above eye level, looking down. He can see the top of his own head in one of the photographs. He can see Soren at the table. He opens the third folder. His name is at the top of the first page. Kael Darnell Reese. Age 29, male Omega, 32 weeks gestation. I'm consulting relationship with the DeLuca organization established 6 months prior. Primary handler, Vittorio DeLuca. Known to have flagged gala operation 11 weeks prior. Assessed risk level, moderate. His due date is listed. His home address is listed. His obstetrician's name is listed. The name of the hospital where he has been scheduled to deliver is listed. Kael closes the folder. He closes it carefully, the way you close something when your hands want to do something very different, and you are making a specific decision not to let them. He looks at Vittorio. Vittorio has read it over his shoulder. His expression is the particular controlled stillness of a man who is angry in the specific way that people are angry when something gets close to someone they have decided to protect. The baby's file, Kael says. I saw it. They were going to use it. Yes. As leverage against you, through me. Vittorio picks up the white envelope from the desk. He opens it. Inside, a handwritten note. 2 sentences. The handwriting is precise, unhurried, the handwriting of someone who learned penmanship when that was still something people were taught. You found what I left. Now you know what you're actually fighting. The laptop password is Soren1017. Happy hunting. Kael reads it twice. He looks at Vittorio. Vittorio looks at the laptop. He types in the password. The screen unlocks, and what opens on the screen is not a file. It is not a document or a folder or a spreadsheet. It is a live feed. 6 camera angles, tiled. 3 of them are the Gala building. 1 is the street outside this building. 1 is a parking structure Kael does not recognize. And 1 is a black Tesla, engine running, parked in a loading zone 4 blocks west. In the driver's seat, a man in a grey suit. Aldrich Beaumont. He has not left the area. He has been watching. Kaelin's phone buzzes. Unknown number, the same one as before. Now you're seeing it. He stayed to make sure the cleanup happened. The hard drive has everything. Don't let your detective friend come up here alone. Beaumont has 1 more person inside the Gala building. You haven't found them yet. Kaelin's blood goes cold. He looks at Vittorio. Soren, he says. They are already moving. The elevator back to the Gala building takes 22 seconds. Kael counts every single one. He has his phone in his hand, and Vittorio beside him and Deshawn 2 steps behind. And the portable hard drive is in Vittorio's inside jacket pocket. And everything about the last 6 minutes has reorganized itself into a single, immediate, non-negotiable priority. Get back to Soren. The service entrance opens into the kitchen corridor, and they move through it at the pace of people who are not running, because running announces itself, but who are as close to running as controlled urgency allows. The kitchen staff, still present, still processing the evening's dramatic turn, part automatically. A prep cook flattens against a stainless steel counter. A server steps back into a shelf. Kael does not look at them. He pushes through the swing door into the dining hall. The room has changed in the 21 minutes he was gone. Most guests are seated now. The sustained, a low-level exhaustion of people who have been held in a space longer than expected, beginning to produce compliance where initial anxiety produced movement. Detective Cruz and 2 other officers are still working the room in sections. The string quartet has given up any pretense of their original purpose and is sitting with their instruments cased, phones out, doing the same thing everyone else in the room is doing. Waiting. Dashiell Valhart is standing at the table's edge, exactly where Kael left him. Soren is in the chair beside him. Kael exhales. He crosses the room. Soren sees him first, eyes tracking to the entrance the moment the swing door moved, with the peripheral attention of someone who monitors entries and exits as a matter of habit. The boy's expression shifts fractionally when he sees Kaelin's face, and he signs immediately, "What happened?" Kael reaches the table and crouches beside Soren's chair, slowly, knees negotiating the distance, one hand on the table, and signs, "We found the room. We have everything. But listen to me carefully." He makes each sign deliberate, unhurried, looking directly at the boy. "There is 1 more person in this room right now who works for the same people as Maris. We don't know who yet. I need you to look around this room and tell me if you see anyone behaving differently than they were behaving before I left. Soren looks at him for exactly 2 seconds. Then the boy's eyes move. Not obviously. Not with the scanning, head-turning visual sweep that would announce what he is doing to anyone watching. They move the way Soren's eyes always move, with the careful, distributed attention of someone who has learned to gather information peripherally, because looking directly at things sometimes makes those things change before you can finish reading them. He looks at the room for 40 seconds. Then he looks back at Kaelin. He signs, "The woman who was taking the video, the one in the blue dress. She stopped when Vittorio's man took her phone. But since you left, she changed where she's sitting. She moved 2 tables closer to the main exit. Her shoes are different." Kaelin goes still. He signs, "Different how?" Soren signs, "She was wearing heels when I first saw her. Now she has flats. They're in her bag. I can see the heel sticking out. She changed into flats. People only do that when they're going to need to move fast." Kaelin does not look at the woman immediately. He looks at Dashiell. And Dashiell has been watching the signed exchange with the focused intensity of a man reading a conversation in a foreign language he knows just well enough to follow the structure, if not every word. He caught enough. He speaks quietly, mouth barely moving. "Blue dress. Northeast quadrant. She came with the senator-adjacent man who left early." Kaelin processes this. The senator-adjacent man who left early, who left before Maris was arrested, who left before anyone understood that Beaumont was not the top of the structure either. "She's not running," Kaelin says. "She's waiting for a signal. From Beaumont. Or from whoever Beaumont is waiting for." Vittorio, who has positioned himself 2 feet behind Kaelin's left shoulder, with the unobtrusive presence of a man who is very good at existing in spaces without being registered by them, says, "The live feed on the laptop had 6 angles. The 5th one, the parking structure, I didn't recognize." "Yes. I recognized it on the second look. It's this building, sub-level 2. He pauses. "There's a car parked down there that doesn't belong to any of the guests." Kaelin's jaw tightens. He looks at Soren. The boy has been watching their faces, reading the shape of the conversation from expression and posture and the subtle physical language of people managing urgency. He signs, "You want me to do something. It is not a question." Kaelin looks at him for a moment. He thinks about 32 weeks and a room full of adults who have consistently been 1 step behind this 7-year-old child all evening. He thinks about what it costs to ask a child to be brave after a night like this one. Then he thinks about what it costs not to. And he signs, "I want you to look at the woman in the blue dress one more time. Tell me what she's holding in her right hand." Soren turns his head at the natural, unhurried pace of a child looking around a room out of boredom. His eyes pass over the woman without stopping. They continue around the room. They return to Kaelin. He signs, "A phone that isn't hers. The case is wrong. She's been holding it since you left. She's waiting for it to receive something." Kaelin stands. He moves to Vittorio and speaks directly into his ear. Voice below the ambient noise of the room. "She has a secondary device, waiting for a signal from the sub-level. We need Deshawn in sub-level 2 right now, and we need Detective Cruz in the next 45 seconds. And we need to do both of those things without the woman in the blue dress seeing either happen." Vittorio's eyes move around the room. One slow, complete circuit. "Deshawn," he says, barely audible. Deshawn, stationed near the corridor entrance, does not respond visibly. He simply moves, with the ambient casualness of someone heading to the bathroom, toward the service elevator. Vittorio approaches Detective Cruz from her left side at the exact angle of someone asking a logistical question rather than reporting an emergency, and speaks for 18 seconds while maintaining the body language of a casual cooperative witness. Detective Cruz doesn't change her expression, but her right hand moves to her radio. Kaelin walks back to the table. He sits beside Soren. He does not look at the woman in the blue dress. He looks at Soren. And he signs, slowly, with the particular care of someone who wants to be accurate rather than reassuring, "This is almost over. The hardest part is already done." Soren signs back, "Is that true, or are you saying it because it's what I need to hear?" Kaelin holds the boy's gaze. "Both," he signs. "Sometimes those are the same thing. Soren considers this with the philosophical patience of someone who has learned, young, that adults tell two kinds of truth, the kind that is accurate and the kind that holds. He nods. Then he signs. The woman moved again. Kaelin's head comes up. The woman in the blue dress is standing. She is at the edge of her table, back straight, the particular stillness of a person who has received a signal and is processing whether to act on it. The secondary phone is in her closed fist. Her bag is over her shoulder, and heels packed inside, flats on her feet. She looks toward the main entrance. Then she looks, directly, without pretense, at Soren. And Kaelin understands, in the specific way understanding arrives when it is already almost too late, what the signal was. Not for her to leave. For her to confirm that Soren is still in the room. Confirm that the primary objective of this entire evening, not the custody transfer, not Dashiell's signature, not Maris's operation, all of which were scaffolding, is still seated at this table. The Tesla on the live feed, running, the car in sub-level 2, waiting, the woman in the blue dress, confirming. The endgame was never the document. The endgame was always the boy. Kaelin is on his feet. Dashiell. His voice comes out level but fast. Pick up your son, right now. I don't put him down. Dashiell does not ask why. He reaches for Soren. The woman in the blue dress takes one step toward the exit. Detective Cruz is already moving, not toward the exit, toward the woman, cutting the angle with the geometric precision of someone who has run this type of interception before and knows that the angle is everything. The woman sees her coming. She runs. She makes it 9 feet. Detective Ania Cruz, who in the course of this evening has been methodical and patient and systematically thorough in the way that the best detectives are, shows the room a different version of herself. She closes the distance in 4 strides, and the interception is clean and physical and leaves no ambiguity about the outcome. The secondary phone skitters across the marble. Vittorio picks it up before it stops moving, and he looks at the screen. One open text thread. The most recent received message, arrived 40 seconds ago, reads, "Confirmed. Move now. You have 3 minutes before the second unit clears the floor." Vittorio shows it to Kaelin. Kaelin reads it. He looks at Dashiell, who is holding his son against his chest with both arms and whose expression is past the point of anything that can be described as controlled. "The sub-level," Kaelin says. From the stairwell entrance, the door bangs open. Deshawn appears. He is not alone. Behind him, 2 men in handcuffs, the particular grey-faced, over-cooperative expression of people who have decided very quickly that the version of tonight where they cooperate is the only viable version. And between them, or held by a zip tie to Deshawn's left wrist, and wearing a grey suit that is considerably more rumpled than it was 2 hours ago, Aldrich Beaumont. The room processes this in stages. The guests, the staff, the officers, the string quartet with their phones, all of them go through the same sequence. Recognition, recalibration. The specific social reconfiguration of a group of people who are witnessing the end of something and are trying, in real time, to determine what side of it they have been standing on. Beaumont's expression is composed. He is already calculating. He looks at the room. He looks at Detective Cruz. He looks at Vittorio. He looks at Kaelin. And then he looks at Soren. The boy is in his father's arms, face turned outward, watching. Beaumont looks at him for 3 seconds. Then he smiles. Small, private. The smile of a man who has lost a battle and is already thinking about the next one. And he says, clearly enough for the room to hear, "You can arrest me. You can take the hard drive. You can file everything in that room." He pauses. "But the man I work for will have every charge dismissed in 72 hours. And in 96, everything you built tonight goes away." The room is silent. Soren taps his father's shoulder. Dashiell loosens his hold enough for the boy to turn. Soren looks at Beaumont. Then he lifts one hand. He signs one word. Not at Kaelin. Not at his father. At Beaumont directly, with the clear, unhurried certainty of a 7-year-old who has been in this room all night, reading every face and every hand and every movement, and who has arrived, after 2 hours of observation, and at a conclusion the adults are still catching up to. No. Beaumont stares at him. Soren signs again, slower, larger, as if making certain there is no ambiguity. "No. Because I wrote everything down. including the name you said to the woman in the blue dress when you thought I was looking at the floor. Kaelin's head snaps to the boy. Soren reaches into the inner pocket of his jacket. He produces a folded piece of paper. He holds it out to Detective Cruz. She takes it. She unfolds it. She reads it. And the expression that crosses Detective Anaya Cruz's face, the composed, methodical, professionally calibrated expression of a woman who has spent a career not reacting visibly to the information she receives, becomes, for exactly 1 second, something that is not professional at all. It is awe. She looks at the paper. She looks at Soren. She looks at the paper again. She says to the officer beside her, in a voice that has gone very quiet and very certain, "Get the federal line, right now." The federal agent arrives at 11:03 p.m. in a coat that is too thin for the weather and an expression that suggests she has been awake since before this was her problem and has accepted that it will remain her problem for the foreseeable future. Her name is Special Agent Renata Osei, and she is 41 years old. And the last time she was inside a building this expensive was 18 months ago in a case that ended with 3 convictions and 1 acquittal that she is still thinking about. She reads Soren's paper in the elevator. She reads it again in the hallway. She enters the dining hall and goes directly to Detective Cruz without looking at anyone else in the room, and which tells Kaelen Reese, who has positioned himself with a clear sightline to the entrance, 2 things. She already knows who is in this space, and she has decided who matters. The conversation between Agent Osei and Detective Cruz lasts 6 minutes. Kaelen watches it from across the room, reading what he can from posture and expression and the particular way each woman holds her body when she is receiving information that confirms rather than surprises. They have been looking for this name, the name on Soren's paper. They have been looking for a long time. Dashiell Valhart is seated at the table now, Soren in the chair beside him, their shoulders touching in the way of people who have stopped performing distance. Dashiell's jacket is still across Soren's shoulders. His hands are on the table, open, and every few minutes he signs something small to the boy. Not full sentences, just words. Checks, okay? Still with me? Good. Each time, Soren signs back, yes. Vittorio stands at the east wall, the portable hard drive in evidence custody now, Deshawn beside him. They are watching Agent Osei the way professionals watch each other, not with suspicion, with assessment. The specific calibration of people deciding how much of their operational knowledge the current situation requires them to share. Kaelen sits down. It is not a decision so much as a concession. His body has been making this argument for 40 minutes, and he has been outvoting it, and the vote has just gone the other way. He pulls a chair from the nearest table and sits, one hand at his lower back, and breathes the deliberate, a measured breath of someone conducting an internal inventory, 32 weeks, 3 days. Braxton Hicks recurring, not escalating, consistent interval. He does the math. He gives himself 90 seconds. The baby rolls. I know, he thinks. Almost. Agent Osei finishes with Detective Cruz and moves toward Dashiell with the direct, unadorned approach of a federal agent who has learned that powerful men respond better to being treated as cooperative witnesses than as suspects, at least initially. She speaks to him for 4 minutes. Then she looks at Soren. She signs, slowly, and the ASL is better than Detective Cruz. More natural, less formal, the signing of someone who uses it regularly rather than professionally. My name is Renata. I work for the federal government. You've been very brave tonight. Can I ask you a few questions? Soren looks at his father. Dashiell signs, she's safe, answer her. Soren looks back at Agent Osei. He signs, okay, but I want my dad to stay. She signs, absolutely. The interview takes 9 minutes. Kaelen does not hear most of it. He is far enough away, and the ambient noise of the room is enough. And he is engaged in his own separate activity, going through the mental architecture of the evening the way you go through a building after an emergency, checking each room to make sure nothing was left behind that shouldn't have been left behind. Maris Kettler, in custody. Terence Okafor, cooperating. The bribed security personnel, in custody. The woman in the blue dress, her name, Kaelen has since learned, is Dominique Ferris, and she has been in Beaumont's operational network for 4 years, in custody. Aldrich Beaumont, in custody. The two men from sub-level 2, in custody. The man whose name is on Soren's paper. Not in custody. Not yet. Not in this building. Not in this city, possibly. But known, named, documented in a child's handwriting on a piece of paper that is now in federal evidence custody. The most unlikely origin for the most consequential document of a 9-month federal investigation. The name belongs to a man who has spent 20 years building the kind of infrastructure that runs on other people's reputations. He doesn't own the operations. He owns the architecture around them, the legal frameworks, the political connections, the financial channels, the charitable organizations used as cover. He is, in the language of the case file that Agent Osei has been building for 18 months, a facilitator, and the person who makes sure that the people who run operations like tonight's can operate without leaving traces. Except for one evening in a dining hall off Fifth Avenue, he said his name. To a deaf child he assumed couldn't use it against him. Agent Osei finishes the interview. She stands. She looks at Soren for a long moment with an expression that Kael, watching from across the room, can read clearly from 30 feet away. She thanks the boy. Not the way adults thank children, performing gratitude for a small contribution, reducing what was done to something manageable and age-appropriate. She thanks him the way you thank a colleague, clean, direct, specific to what was actually given. Soren nods. He does not perform modesty, he simply nods. Agent Osei moves toward Vittorio. Their conversation is brief. 3 minutes, low voices, the exchange of a business card and something from the hard drive that Deshawn has already transferred to a federal compliant device. Vittorio is, in the language of this particular situation, a complicated ally. He and Agent Osei have the particular careful respect of two people who know they are on the same side tonight and a different one tomorrow, and have decided to be accurate about that, rather than pretend otherwise. Maris Kettler is escorted out at 11:31 p.m. She does not look at Soren as she passes. She looks at the floor. The room watches her go. At 11:44 p.m., the guests are cleared to leave, in organized groups, statements taken, contact information documented. The exit is efficient and quiet and has the anticlimactic texture of every high-stakes situation after the climax has passed and the administrative reality sets in. And people collect their Louis Vuitton gift bags, or they don't. Several are left on the table, the chandelier stays on. At 11:52 p.m., the dining hall contains 12 people. Dashiell and Soren, Vittorio and Deshawn, Zamir, Detective Cruz, Agent Osei, 2 officers, 1 forensic technician photographing the table and corridor, and Kael Reese, still seated in the chair he sat in 20 minutes ago. Soren detaches from his father's side and walks to Kael. He stops in front of him and looks at him with the direct, assessing attention that is apparently just how this child sees the world. Fully, without the social filter that teaches most people to look at things obliquely. He signs, "You're tired." Kael signs back, "Yes." And the baby? Still here. Still healthy. A little opinionated about the evening. Soren's expression, which has been controlled and purposeful for 2 hours, does something that is not quite a smile, but is the structural precursor to one. The specific face of a child who finds something funny and is deciding whether to let it show. He lets it show. It is a remarkable face. Kael feels something settle inside him. Not resolve, because resolve is something you need when the outcome is uncertain, and the outcome is no longer uncertain. Something quieter than that. The particular settling of a person who made a decision in a difficult moment and can now see what the decision built. He looks at the boy. He signs, "You did something tonight that most adults couldn't do." Soren signs, "You did too. I had the recording, and Vittorio, and Detective Cruz." Soren signs, patient and precise, "You sat down next to me. Nobody else did." Kael holds the boy's gaze. There is no good response to that. There is only the truth, which is that sometimes the bravest and most complicated and most consequential thing a person does in their life is pull out a chair. Dashiell approaches from behind his son. He looks at Kael with the expression of a man who has spent the last 3 hours being recalibrated and is still, in some fundamental way, mid-process. Not finished, not resolved. in the specific state of a person who has had a foundational understanding of themselves, revised, and is learning what they are now. He starts to sign something, he stops, he tries again. His hands are not as practiced as Kaelin's. They carry the particular imprecision of effort rather than fluency. But they are deliberate, and they are present, and they are trying. Thank you. For sitting down. Kaelin looks at him. He signs back. Learn the rest of his language, the way he learned yours. Dashiell's throat works. He nods. Agent Osei appears at Kaelin's right. She looks down at him with the practical, direct attention she brings to everything. Mr. Reese, do you need medical attention? I need to go home, Kaelin says. The contractions. He looks at her. She looked at him properly at some point in the last hour, which he respects. Irregular. Not progressing. He pauses, but also not stopping. I can have a medic. My doctor's on call. I'll call her from the car. He begins the process of standing, which involves the table and his right arm, and a moment of inelegant negotiation that he has stopped pretending is graceful. I need the drive copies for our attorneys, and I'll need to give a formal statement tomorrow. Tomorrow afternoon, Agent Osei confirms. I'll send the location. Vittorio appears beside her, and the look he gives Kaelin is the look of a man who has been worried about something for 2 hours, and is in the process of deciding whether the worry was warranted or excessive, and has not yet landed on either. Car's outside, he says. Deshawn's driving. I can take a cab. Deshawn's driving, Vittorio says again, in the tone that does not leave room for the cab. Kaelin looks at him, then at Soren. The boy has moved back to his father's side, shoulder against Dashiell's arm, watching the room empty with the particular attention of someone who is processing rather than resting. His eyes track the forensic technician, the officers, the chandelier, and the table where he sat for 43 minutes while the world talked around him. He looks at Kaelin. He signs one word. Safe? Kaelin signs back without hesitation. Yes. Soren nods. He looks at his father. Dashiell puts one arm around his son, and in the emptying, chandelier-lit, evidence-tagged dining hall of a gala that began as a performance and ended as a reckoning, a billionaire alpha holds his deaf child and says nothing. Because there are no words adequate to the moment, and for the first time in this boy's life, his father is not trying to find them. He is just present. Finally, completely present. Kaelin walks toward the exit. He does not look back. He does not need to. Some things you know are done not because they are finished, but because they have become what they are going to be. And no additional action is required from you, and the only thing left is to walk through the door. He walks through the door. 6 weeks later, Kaelin Reese delivers a boy at 4:17 a.m. 7 pounds, 2 ounces. The delivery room is white and quiet and lit with the specific practical brightness of a place designed for efficiency rather than atmosphere, and it is nothing like a gala and everything unlike the last 6 weeks, which have contained 2 federal depositions, 1 grand jury subpoena, 1 attorney consultation that lasted 4 hours, 17 phone calls from Vittorio De Luca's organization that ranged from logistics to genuine inquiry about his prenatal appointments, and 1 breakfast at a diner in Midtown Manhattan, where Kael Varant sat across from him in a booth and ordered black coffee and said, without preamble, I need to know how to be better at this. Tell me what I did wrong, Kaelin told him. All of it. Kael listened without interrupting for 43 minutes, which was exactly the amount of time Soren had sat at that table while the world talked around him, and Kaelin did not point this out, because he did not need to. Kael is not a man who misses significance when it is placed directly in front of him. He has simply spent years being surrounded by people whose job is to ensure he never has to be uncomfortable enough to find it. That is over now. The baby's name is Theo. Kaelin chose it before he was born, in the same deliberate, private way he makes all his decisions. Alone, in his apartment, at a table with a cup of tea going cold beside him, and turning the question over until the answer stopped feeling like a choice and started feeling like a fact. Theo Darnell Reese. The nurse places him on Kaelin's chest at 4:19 a.m., and the weight of him, 7 pounds, 2 ounces, the specific warm living weight of a human being who has been present for everything and witnessed nothing and is ready to begin. makes Kaelin's whole body go quiet in a way that nothing in the last 6 weeks has managed. He holds his son. He breathes. At 4:23 a.m., his phone lights up on the bedside table. He does not check it. He checks it at 5:48 a.m., when Theo is sleeping in the hospital bassinet with the affronted, concentrated expression of a person encountering the concept of a bassinet for the first time and finding it inadequate. 7 messages. Vittorio. Call when you're ready, not before. Agent Osei. Congratulations. The filing came through this morning. Grand jury returned the indictment at midnight. Detective Cruz. It's done. All counts, including the federal trafficking charges. Tell the baby the good guys won. 3 more from numbers he recognizes as Vittorio's staff. Brief, practical, the organizational language of people confirming that specific logistics have been handled. And 1 from a number that has no contact name attached to it, that he has not heard from in 6 weeks, since a parking structure and a room with a locked laptop and a white envelope. He was arrested at 11:58 p.m. International Coordination. 3 jurisdictions. The indictment has 41 counts. Thought you should know. Congratulations on the baby. Kaelin stares at this message for a long time. He still does not know who sent it. And he has theories. Vittorio has theories. Agent Osei, when he asked her during the second deposition, gave him the look of someone who has theories they are professionally required not to confirm, which is its own kind of answer. What matters is that the name on Soren's paper, the name above Beaumont, the name said once in a dining hall to a deaf child who was assumed to be unable to use it, is now on 41 federal counts. International coordination. 3 jurisdictions. The architecture is exposed. The man who built it is in custody. And the person who handed the federal case its most consequential piece of evidence is a 7-year-old boy in Manhattan, who is, at this moment, Kaelin checks the time, accounts for the hour, pictures what he knows of Dashiell's household schedule, almost certainly eating breakfast. And he sets his phone face down. He looks at Theo. The baby is awake now, staring at the ceiling with the focused, contemplative expression that newborns carry in the first hours. Before the world has fully arrived, before the noise and the light and the accumulated information of being alive has had time to become ordinary. Just present. Just looking. Kaelin says out loud, in the quiet of the room, "You missed a night." Theo blinks. "You were there for the whole thing," Kaelin says. "You just couldn't see it yet." The baby makes a sound that is not a word and is not agreement, but that lands in the quiet hospital room at 5:51 a.m. as both. 3 months after the gala, Lucien Vale does something that makes the news for different reasons than he usually makes the news. He testifies. Not because he is subpoenaed, though the subpoena exists, but because he shows up voluntarily, a week early, with his attorneys and his documentation and the specific prepared precision of a man who has decided that the controlled performance of testifying is the least he owes to the outcome of this case. He is on the stand for 2 hours. He is precise, thorough, unflinching in the moments that require unflinching, which include several detailed accounts of the Baltimore night that he has not spoken of publicly before and does not flinch from now. The courtroom is full. Soren is not there. Dashiell and his attorney made that decision early. The boy had given his evidence, given it in the most consequential possible form, and nothing about bringing him into a federal courtroom would add to that or protect it. Soren is at school, a school in Lower Manhattan with a deaf education program that Dashiell funded the expansion of 4 months ago. Not announced, not photographed, just funded. After the testimony on the courthouse steps, a reporter asks Dashiell what he wants people to take from the case. Dashiell is quiet for a moment, then he signs his answer. Full ASL, both hands, clear shapes. The interpreter beside him voices it for the cameras, but Dashiell is not looking at the cameras. He is looking at the interpreter, making sure the signs are right, checking each one the way you check the work you have been practicing alone in your study at 2 in the morning. My son is not defined by what he cannot hear. He is defined by what he sees. The world would be better at both if it spent less time talking and more time looking. The clip is shared 9 million times in 4 days. Soren sees it on his tablet at breakfast. He watches it twice. He signs to his father that evening, sitting at the kitchen table, Dashiell across from him, with coffee going cold and the specific patient attention of a man who has been working on his listening for 3 months and is getting better at it every week. You signed it wrong in 2 places. Dashiell looks at him. Show me, he signs, and Soren shows him. 6 months after the gala, Kaelin brings Theo to a park in Brooklyn on a Wednesday afternoon in March, when the light is doing the specific thing it does in early spring, arriving differently, at a new angle, like it has been away and is not yet sure of its welcome. He is sitting on a bench with Theo in a carrier against his chest, facing out, because Theo has opinions about facing inward and has expressed them clearly since week 6, when he hears his name. He looks up. Soren Valhart is standing 4 feet away, in a blue jacket and white sneakers, a tablet under his arm, wearing the expression of a child who has arrived somewhere he intended to arrive and is confirming that it is, indeed, the right place. Behind him, at a distance that is both respectful and clearly deliberate, Dashiell. He raises one hand in a small wave. Kaelin raises one back. Soren walks directly to the bench and sits beside Kaelin with the unself-conscious confidence of someone who has decided this is where they are going to be and has no interest in performing the approach. He looks at Theo. He signs at the baby. Hello, I'm Soren. I was there when you kicked. Theo stares at Soren's hands with the focused, interested attention of a baby encountering something new. Soren looks at Kaelin. Does he understand? Kaelin signs, not yet. But he's watching. Soren nods like this is acceptable. He opens his tablet. He has something to show Kaelin, a program, it turns out, a new curriculum for a deaf education center in California that Dashiell's foundation is piloting. And Soren has been part of the design process, which Kaelin only learns now, sitting on this bench, and which surprises him and does not surprise him at all. They sit for 40 minutes. Dashiell joins them after 20, bringing coffee he purchased from a cart near the entrance and handing one to Kaelin without asking whether he wants it, which Kaelin accepts without commenting on, and which is itself a kind of conversation. The park is full of the specific Wednesday afternoon population of parents and caregivers and children and dogs and people sitting alone with books and headphones. The ordinary, unremarkable texture of a city afternoon that has no idea it is occurring in the orbit of people who, 6 months ago, shared a night that rearranged things. Soren teaches Theo 3 signs. Theo produces no recognizable response to any of them. Soren does not find this discouraging. He is patient with the process in the way of someone who has never expected communication to be easy or immediate and has learned to value the attempt separately from the result. Kaelin watches him and thinks about the dining hall. He thinks about the fork hitting the plate. He thinks about pulling out a chair. And he thinks about how long Soren sat at that table, 43 minutes, in a room of 200 people before anyone sat down next to him. He thinks about how many rooms there are, right now, in this city, in this country, with someone sitting at the edge in the same specific way. Unheard, present, waiting. He does not think about this with grief. He thinks about it with the particular orientation of a person who pulled out a chair once and has decided that once was not enough. Dashiell says beside him, not looking up from his coffee, "The foundation has a new position: community outreach, deaf advocacy and family support." He pauses. "I thought you should know it exists." Kaelin looks at him. Dashiell looks at his son, who is currently teaching Theo the sign for hello for the 4th consecutive time with absolute, inexhaustible patience. "I'm not offering it," Dashiell says. "I'm mentioning it. There's a difference." "You're not subtle," Kaelin says. "No," Dashiell agrees. "I have been told that." Kaelin looks at Theo. Theo is watching Soren's hands. He is not signing back. He does not have the motor control yet and will not for months. But he is watching, fully, with both eyes and all his attention, the way newborns watch before the world teaches them to look away. He is watching, and he is learning, and he has no idea yet how early this started for him, how much was already decided and undone and rebuilt before he arrived. He will learn it later, in pieces, the way children learn everything, not all at once, but over time, from the people who were there, who will tell it to him in whatever language he understands best. Soren signs at Theo one more time, "Hello." And Theo, for the first time, makes a sound, not a word, not a sign, just a sound. Small, emphatic, the specific vocal announcement of a baby who has been watching something and has decided to respond. Soren's face opens. He looks at Kaelen. He signs. He answered. Kaelen signs back. Yes, he did. And in a park in Brooklyn on a Wednesday afternoon in March, with Theo against his chest and Soren's hands still moving and Dashiell watching his son's face with the expression of a man learning, day by day, to see what was always there, Kaelen Reese leans back on the bench and breathes. Not strategically, not controlled, just breathes. The boy at the table was never invisible. The room was just blind. It took a pregnant Omega who had every reason to remain seated and only one reason to stand, the same reason that has always been enough, to make the world finally see. And the world, when pushed, when recorded, when held accountable by a 7-year-old's careful handwriting and a federal indictment and a father practicing sign language alone at 2 a.m, the world adjusts. Slowly, imperfectly. But it adjusts. The verdict comes on a Tuesday. Kaelen is feeding Theo when the call arrives, the specific 12-second window between putting the bottle down and picking the baby up when his hands are free and his phone is in reach, which Theo has not yet learned to resent but will. Agent Renata Osei's name on the screen. He answers. She speaks for 40 seconds. He listens. Then he says, "All counts?" "All counts," she says, "or including the federal trafficking charges, sentencing in 8 weeks." He sets the phone down. He picks up Theo. He does not say anything for a moment. He just holds his son against his shoulder in the particular way that parents hold babies when they need to feel the weight of something real, something present, something that has no idea about verdicts or counts or 8 weeks until sentencing, something that is simply warm and alive and here. He says eventually to Theo's ear, "The good guys won." Theo makes the sound he has been making since the park in Brooklyn, the small, emphatic, unambiguous sound of someone who has decided to respond. It means nothing yet, and everything yet. Kaelen laughs. It is a real laugh, not managed, not social, and the kind that arrives before you know it is coming, and that carries in it everything the last 7 months have contained. The fear, and the recording, and the parking structure, and the man in the grey suit, and the delivery room at 4:17 a.m., and the bench in Brooklyn, and 43 minutes of a boy sitting alone at a table with his fork in his hand. All of it. He laughs until Theo looks alarmed, and then he stops laughing and reassures his son with the automatic parental efficiency of a person 3 months into the work, and then he calls Vittorio. The call lasts 2 minutes. Vittorio says, "Good. That is all." It is from Vittorio De Luca, the equivalent of a standing ovation. Kaelen calls Dashiell next. The call is answered in one ring, which means Dashiell was expecting it, or waiting for it, or both, and which is consistent with everything Kaelen now knows about the man. "All counts," Kaelen says. A pause, 3 seconds. "Does Soren know?" "I'm calling you first." Another pause, shorter. "I'll tell him in person, tonight." A beat. "Thank you for calling." "You would have heard in 3 minutes." "I know," Dashiell says. "That's not what I'm thanking you for." Kaelen does not respond to this. He does not have the language for it yet. Not because the language doesn't exist, but because some things are still being assembled, still becoming what they are going to be, and rushing them produces something less than what they could be. He says, "Tell Soren I'll bring Theo by Friday." Dashiell says, "He'll tell you exactly what you're doing wrong with the carrier. He's been researching." Kaelen smiles. He hangs up, and he looks at his apartment, the specific Tuesday afternoon version of it, with the light doing its early spring thing through the window and Theo's toys distributed across the floor in the particular pattern of a baby who is not yet mobile but has opinions about object placement that he communicates through the adults in his orbit. The portable speaker playing something low and unhurried. The cold tea on the counter. The legal files on the table beside it, 3 inches thick and soon to be filed away in the specific way that closed cases are filed, completely finally in a drawer that will not need to be opened again. He looks at all of it. He thinks about the person who sat in the service corridor and pressed record on a phone. He thinks about the version of himself who walked into that gala, 32 weeks along, unknown, and unlooked at, moving through a room of 200 people who had already decided what he was and what he was worth and what he could accomplish. He thinks about Soren's fork hitting the plate. That sound, inaudible to its maker, heard by everyone else. The sound of a child's grip going wrong in a room that had never once considered whether its grip was right. He thinks about what it means that the most important thing he did that night, the thing that started all of it, that produced the recording and the confrontation and the testimony and the indictment and the 41 federal counts decided on a Tuesday while he was feeding his son, was not strategic, was not calculated, was not the result of 6 months of preparation or Vittorio's network or the audio equipment in his jacket pocket. It was a chair, pulled out, sat in. I'm next to a child who needed someone to sit down. Theo reaches up and grabs Kaelin's collar with both fists. He holds on with the absolute, uncomplicated conviction of a person who has identified what matters and has no intention of letting go. Kaelin looks down at him. He signs because he has been doing this since week 1, since before Theo had the motor control to sign back, or the comprehension to assign meaning or any framework at all for the shapes his father's hands make in the air between them. He signs because the practice is the point, because consistency is the point, because the world Theo is being born into is one that can be taught and retaught and built differently than it was. Hello, sweetheart. I love you. You're going to be okay. Theo holds on. The light through the window is the specific light of a city afternoon in early spring, provisional and promising, not yet sure of itself, arriving at a new angle every day, learning where it belongs. It comes through the window and lands on both of them. And stays. There it is. The boy at the table was never invisible. The room just needed one person brave enough to pull out a chair. If this story moved you, if you believe that the smallest act of choosing to see someone can change everything, share this with someone who needs to hear it today. Leave a comment below and tell us what moment hit you hardest. Was it the fork, the recording, the name on that paper? And if you are watching this and you feel like Soren, like you are sitting at a table where no one sees you, know that someone is going to pull out that chair. Sometimes all it takes is one person deciding that your silence is worth sitting beside. Subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications. Every week we bring you stories like this one. Stories about ordinary people doing extraordinary things in the moments that matter. You do not want to miss what comes next.